first test. Because we have the tricolour.
That's how I do it.
I just have to ask Eric what I have to do.
Dennis is here. Yeah, Dennis is here. Hi, Dennis. Hi, William. Got two friends.
All set? Do you want me to go?
I haven't seen Brian Kennedy, but Dennis is here.
You okay with the technology? Yeah, okay. I'd like to reconvene open session. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and silent meditation? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Are we good? Yes, please.
I recommend that minutes pertaining to collective bargaining, NEA ESP negotiation update remain sealed until such time as an agreement has been reached.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion, a second, to recommend the minutes pertaining to collective bargaining, NEA ESP negotiation update remain sealed until such time as an agreement has been reached. Any discussion? Those in favor? Opposed? Recused? One recusal. Thank you, sir.
I recommend that minutes which relate to the privacy of students and their records, approval of home instruction requests, remain sealed.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second to recommend that the minutes which relate to the privacy of students, their records, approval of home instruction requests remain sealed. Any discussion? No. Those in favor? And that was unanimous. Thank you. Dr. Callahan, would you do us?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there were 5 votes in executive session. The first vote was a motion to adjust the agenda. It was unanimous in favor. Those in favor were Luzon, Chambers, Day, Lyle, McAllister, Callahan, Liguori. Second vote was approval of minutes, 7 in favor. Those in favor, Luzon, Chambers, Day, Lyle, McAllister, Callahan, and Liguori. Third vote related to homeschool requests, 7 in favor. Those votes were Luzon, Chambers, Day, Lyle, McAllister, Callahan, and Liguori. The fourth vote was related to contract negotiations. There were 5 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 recused. Those in favor, Chambers, Lyle, McAllister, Callahan, Liguori. Opposed was Day. Recusal was Luzon. Fifth and final vote was to return to open session. It was 6 in favor. Those in favor were Chambers, Day, Lyle, McAllister, Callahan, and Liguori.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Recognition.
Please join me in acknowledging the following. Richmond resident Jackie Kenyon, who passed on October 8th, for her service and support to the Charahoe community.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
uh,
Mr.
I
Day.
might take a moment here to speak on behalf of my neighbor and longtime friend Jackie Kenyon. Some of the people I know Jackie and remember her as a very hardworking individual for Charahoe. And she was on the school committee, and I think I take a second here to tell you how passionate Jackie was about things. In the early days, she was on the school committee, and her husband Skip was also the baseball coach. And Skip tells this story, and if you knew Jackie, you knew that it was an exaggeration on his part. Well, it was a ball game and Jackie was behind the backstop, giving the umpire her opinion on his ability to call balls and strikes. And Skip had a little bit of a dispute with the umpire, so we went walking out to the umpire, and he started apologizing to the home plate umpire and asking him how his day was going. He says, "Well, my day was going pretty good till that broad behind the backstop started to give me a hard time." And Skip says, "Well, that broad's my wife." For calling her broad, but that's the kind of individual Jackie was. She lived and breathed Charahoe all her life, and I said she was a hardworking school committee member back in the day of Robert Andy.
Thank you, Mr. Day, for sharing that.
No,
No,
that's
you're
okay.
good? Okay. Thank you.
I'd also like to recognize and congratulate our high school art teacher, Stacy Wilbur, on her selection as the Rhode Island Secondary Art Educator of the Year. She was nominated by her colleague, Rebecca Peabody.
That's great. Congratulations. She did. Thank you. We're on to public forum. This is the time where members of the public can come forward to speak on items not on the agenda. Thank you for coming out on this awful night. Good evening, Mr. Stahl.
Dave Stahl, Ashaway, Hopkinton. First comment I'd like to make is that there are 7 school committee members here tonight. There are more parents than there are school committee members, and I'd like to see our school committee members be here and be more committed to their responsibilities. When I was on this committee, things were not discussed, sometimes with the reasoning that they were too political. Another thing that is too political is our administrators overlap with other school committees in the state. It sort of gives a sense of administrators and school committee members having each other's backs in terms of policy and politics. 2 committee seats are open right now on this Charahoe School Committee. I believe it would also be too political if an administrator from this school district, one of our paid employees and administrators, were to lobby our town officials, sending emails from their Charahoe account endorsing one candidate for the school committee, their preferred candidate being selected. That certainly gives a bad impression of people as administrators in the community leveraging that position to endorse their candidates for the school committee. And that is what Joe Gencarelli has done this week. I encourage and ask the administration to look into that and to take proper disciplinary measures. Imagine an employee trying to get their choice for the committee to oversee them on the board that's ultimately accountable to them through the superintendent. The second item I'd like to discuss tonight is the policies from several months ago that you changed regarding curriculum objection requests for curriculum objection requests. You made a change in that policy several months ago, and I'm asking you to review the policy again, to take it back out and look at it again. And the change that you made in that policy that was significant to me was taking away the opportunity for staff or faculty or any taxpayers in Charahoe to object to curriculum through that process. Instead, you changed it so that only parents of children in the district could do that. That means everyone else that's a taxpayer in the district without a child currently enrolled lost their say in curriculum objection requests. Tonight, you are seeking to do exactly the same thing with the library and media policy, which I do not approve of.
Hi, Polly Hopkins, Hopkinton. I believe you're all aware of the Gloucester Public School resolution. You should have all gotten it today. And I just wanted to ask a couple of questions on that. I have a copy of it here if anybody needs any details. I'm looking for a member of the school committee to sponsor this on the next agenda. I think it needs to be discussed what happened with this school committee board. And I would also like to know, And I'd like to say, I don't want to see my tax dollars go to an organization that seeks to silence parent voices. So I want to know, how much do we pay in membership dues to this organization? And a couple weeks ago when I was here, it was mentioned that Tim Duffy had reached out and contacted you, didn't know who he was. This is the result of that. And his, beyond his means, some kind of political leveraging, I don't know. But I would like somebody on the school committee to take this up and discuss this resolution that was put forth through the Gloucester Public Schools. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. I guess we'll move on to policy.
So the first policy is the fixed asset accounting policy. This is a revision. I recommend approval of the revisions to this policy, which has been reviewed and approved by legal counsel.
Second.
There's a recommendation to approve, a second to approve the revisions to the fixed asset accounting policy. I now open this up for questions and or discussion. Dr. Callahan?
So why is the change, I think I understand, but why is the change from 1,000 to 5,000 necessary?
Yes, Mr. Draco?
We received notice from our accounting, the audit firm,
Mhm.
and they advised that GASB is increasing the material value of assets. They're recommending a $5,000 threshold. Currently ours is 1,000. So for auditing purposes, they're going to be looking for a $5,000 threshold. And with our policy not aligned with GASB, which is the Government Accounting Standards.
They can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't even hear Ryan's question, so.
Oh, I asked, on page 2 of 5, it changes the $1,000 capitalization
Okay,
value to
Okay.
5,000. And so Ned was clarifying
okay.
for us,
Wanna
if you
move the
could do
mic
it again,
down?
just
Sure.
briefly.
So the $1,000 limit that we have in our policy will soon conflict with the recommended government accounting standards level of $5,000. And the reason for that level is to clarify accounting standards across all government entities. So our auditor has brought this to our attention. It's something I think we knew was coming, we just hadn't reacted to yet. But this will keep us aligned with GASB, which is the standard that our auditors measure us against. It still means that if we buy, let's say, $20,000 items, we'll aggregate those and include them in a report. So we won't lose track of detail, but it will have us aligned with GASB.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay, so I'll move it to a vote. Those in favor of the policy, the fixed asset accounting policy revision, those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Recusals, abstentions, that was unanimous. Thank you very much.
The next policy on the agenda is Library Media Center Policy Revision. I recommend approval of the revisions of this policy, which have been reviewed and approved by legal counsel.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the revisions to the Library Media Center policy. Those, I'll open this up for discussion and questions. Anybody from the committee first? Okay, I was just giving the committee a chance to comment first. Okay, Reverend Stahl, yes?
So I think that the change that's in this policy that bothers me is the change from any Charahoe teachers or staff or faculty members or any taxpayers being allowed to object to materials that are in the library and media center. You're making a change to change that only to parents of current students. I'll let you all find that spot
Page
and
8,
read
12.
over. So
Page 8.
So obviously, you're taking voice away from a large group of people who are paying taxes in the district. I keep hearing that we're interested in hearing all the voices, that we're interested in everybody's comments. We want everyone in the discussion, and we want to listen to everyone. This policy, just like the curriculum one, does the exact opposite. Library over the last few weeks. When we have those well, that's not good. We don't want too much conversation and too many people involved in this. And this policy comes out. And it comes out with an update that takes a voice away from every taxpayer in the community that doesn't have a child in the district. Someone may withdraw their child because they're not comfortable with the materials that are here and may want to object to the materials before putting their child back in. Someone may intend to have a child in the district at a later time and want to protest materials that are here. Some may be retired and have paid taxes here for decades and believe they have a say in what materials are here.
Excuse me, David. Thank you.
Craig's car warranty is expiring. So you're taking the voice away from a large group of people with this policy. It's a plain fact and it's obvious. And I would like to hear some sort of justification for that. And if people don't have any justification for that and you vote and pass this policy, I will stay after it. And you have to know and understand that you are casting a vote to take the voice away from people that are paying taxes, unless they have a child in the district. And that will be on you if you vote for that policy. And I'd love to hear your justification for why you would make that change.
Wait a minute,
Oh, wait, okay, Donna, go ahead.
excuse me. I wanted to respond to why I think,
Go ahead.
I really think that it's fine the way it is because anybody in the community, any taxpayer, anybody outside of the community could raise objection and go through one of the people who is on the list of filling out this form. If they can convince that person that that is something that is objectionable or enhances our curriculum, they can suggest to that individual who works here or a parent who is involved here that they can either add it to the curriculum, add it to the package, or take it away from the package, bring it before the committee. I don't think we're limiting anybody's voice, but they have to go through a protocol, a group of people who are sufficiently acknowledged to have a strong interest in what happens here at Charahoe, as far as their education, as far as the education in the media is concerned. So I hope that satisfies you as my objection to what you're suggesting, but I don't think we're limiting anybody's voice in this. Anybody can contact me if you don't like something in the library and I will review it. I think you've done that before, Mr. Strahl, and I bought the book and I read the book. So, anyway.
Mr. Day?
Again, reading this again, I'd have to agree with Mr. Stahl. It says the parent. So if you want to push it to the extent anyone who is sending a child from Westerly, South Kingston, or any of the other surrounding districts that are not taxpayers in Charahoe, has a right to object to something, but it's taking away the taxpayer in the district from having that same right. So I think there's some work to be done on this in that respect. Personally, he has a point. The residents of this district, but now it says parents of anybody in this district, which includes, like I say, the sending districts. They have more say in objecting to something without going through the need to convince someone else in the district to go to fight their battle for them. So I think he brings a very good point up.
And/or play.
Just, is there any rationale why?
It was reviewed by legal, and that was the recommendation, if you remember from the objections to curriculum, that it could significantly backlog the district if anyone at any time in any community. So the focus was on the students and their parents being able to object based on the fact that that's who we service.
That's who's being impacted.
But, and I know John, if John wants to clarify, but it was based on legal.
Yeah,
advice.
no, the issue is one of line drawing. And frankly, parents should be able to have a say in terms of what their children are reading. But it's really not, in my opinion, appropriate that somebody else is telling somebody else's kid what to read or what they can't read. And frankly, that's what is being proposed from the audience tonight, that somebody who's other than a parent can come in and say, no, ma'am, your child can't read that book. So frankly, what's being proposed from the audience takes away from parents.
Yes.
And let me just add that the superintendent has the final word on this. So anybody can fill out this is just simply filling out the form. And then the superintendent makes the decision. If somebody wants the form filled out, they can, as I said, find somebody to fill it out for them. And then it will be before the superintendent.
Donna,
I don't see a problem.
there's a
with that.
committee,
Huh?
there's a process.
It's a
does-
process.
Yeah, it doesn't
It's a
go,
process.
go ahead.
Yeah, before it would come to the superintendent, the assistant superintendent would create the
Yeah,
team
right.
to review the requests of the objectionable material or book
So
that's being
there is a
presented.
process involved, and
Correct.
anybody can approach a person to fill a little form out.
A parent
A parent
Yeah,
or
or student who's
student.
18.
the age group. Any other questions from the committee? Conversation?
I'm just waiting for them to finish.
Polly? Go ahead, Polly.
Okay.
Yeah, you can speak.
Holly Hopkins again. So a question, how many of you have children in this school currently?
In this physical school? or
Yes.
in any of the schools?
In this school, where you would be able to make a comment on the list of 31 books that I have here. 31 books in this high school and the middle school.
That you don't agree with.
That's on your list,
That is on my list that are questionable,
to you.
okay?
To you. To you.
To me,
Yeah.
if you'd like, I can pull out sections of Lawn Boy and read them to you.
So I think this is what Mr. Anderson is saying, that what you find questionable, I may not.
Exactly.
So why should I be concerned about that if I'm okay with that? I'm not sure why I should respond to that list if me or someone else doesn't have any concern with that.
Yeah,
list of-
well, I, as a parent, wanted to know.
You have every right to be concerned.
There's other taxpayers in this district who pay taxes that supply all of this.
I think the policy allows for them to say whatever
yeah,
they're
you could
concerned.
fill the form out.
The taxpayer, residents, you're just saying it's changing over to parents. So,
I think what Mr. Anderson said, you may be missing the larger point. You and Mr. Stahl are focusing on the rights of the residents of the community.
Mhm.
But his point is, by empowering the non-parent residents, you're actually disempowering the parents of the school.
No.
Those who have, yes.
Yes, you are.
I,
Yes, you are.
I understand what you're saying. It didn't go past me. But it does not take away the rights of the residents who pay the taxes in this town. If they see something that they don't agree with, that their taxpayer dollars are being used for at this school. That is democracy in full effect.
So democracy
So-
implies that as a taxpayer, you have a voice, but doesn't mean that you get to make the decision.
No,
So as
but
Don
they have a
Chambers said,
voice
you
to
can come to
fill out.
her. You seem to enjoy cutting me off each time.
I didn't mean to.
So as Mrs. Chambers said, you can come to her if there were a groundswell of residents who were not parents. And you're opposed to a view of people you think sit up here. That's okay. But what if it was your view that a group of non-parents didn't like and said, no, you're wrong, and we're taking your right away, even though we don't have children in the school you're concerned with? Our voice is more important because we also pay taxes. You're fine with that?
No, can you bat it back to me now?
Are you fine with that?
No, because that's a whole lot of supposition that you just put in there. Like, suppose this happened, suppose that happened. There,
Could you, Ms. Hopkins, do you have some more comments that you'd like to make? Because Dr. Callahan has a few.
okay, but I was just answering the question. It still does not mitigate the right of the residents and the taxpayers in this town to make comments. We need to leave that avenue open. And obviously, there have been books, and this has happened already. And we are here in response to that. We're not creating something, we're not making suppositions about what if this happens, what if that happens, we're going to change
I'm sure
policies just
Yeah,
in
I'm
case.
trying to get it.
That's what happened with the National School Board Association. They made a
we're
very
talking
large
about the
amount of
policy.
supposition.
Ms. Hopkins, we're talking about the policy. We have to
Yes.
stick, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Callahan, do you have a comment before I take more?
Sure. So I think establishing that the people who are impacted by the decision have the decision and can influence content is the appropriate position to take. Now, I get that David Stahl and Polly Hopkins want to impose, censorship on the district. They do. You want to limit what's in the library. You've got a list. You've got books that you want to ban. I get it.
I didn't even say that. I
Fair
said
enough.
have a
I
list of
retract
future
it. You have
books.
31 books or so that you're concerned with.
They're questionable.
I think that if you, as a parent, have concerns, you have an avenue to petition it. And that's the appropriate way to do it.
My neighbors
Outside of
are
that,
practicing.
I think outside of that, what happens is you pose the risk of overburdening the district, responding to concerns on things that will not impact those who are concerned. They will have no impact on them. They do not engage in tarot. They don't access the library. They don't read the media. And I think therein lies the major problem. Fundamentally, I think that this is a better approach to take. It allows for parents with students in the district to oppose materials in a proper format. And then it limits the amount that we're going to have to deal with to those who are going to be impacted by it. And so I think I'm okay with this. I haven't heard an argument yet that makes me think that this should be objected to.
So here it is, Ryan.
I'm all ears.
Great points, and I understand them. But you just said the people who are impacted. It should only be the people who are impacted. If you believe that the only people who are impacted are parents of students, and that's the only people you should be collecting money from. If that's the only people that this district is serving, if that's the only people you answer to are the people with kids in the schools, that's the only people you should accept taxes from. You cannot make that argument. Mr. Liguori made excellent points. I could always count on them, and I appreciate them. But you're missing a word in this whole system, which is public school. It's public. It's paid for by all of these people. Now, you have all three of you have just said very specifically that people who are paying taxes but don't have a kid here are not impacted, not as important, and listening to their voice would be a burden to the district. Now, I want to say there's a balance of power, every voice included. Gary, you said the decision can't be made by a parent for what someone else's child can read. And I agree with that. There's a whole process that walks this through 8 layers over several weeks and months. And ultimately, this committee to a school committee in the end to finally make a vote. And that's the people that the community has elected. So nobody's trying to make, I can't make a decision about a book or a piece of curriculum that's here. I can only start the process and say, I think there's something questionable and it needs to be looked at. What you're saying with this policy is that there are certain people whose money you collect that shouldn't be even allowed to go through that process. Nobody's making a decision. You are not impacted by this. If they are not impacted, if you're not serving that taxpayer, then you should not be taking their money. It is a public school.
Dr.
David, as a man who uses words to make a living, you make a persuasive argument. However, it's a very binary, narrow view that's focusing on reviewing textbooks, determining whether we should collect taxes or not. And I don't believe that's what anyone is saying. And I also feel confident that grouping the three of us into those comments was not necessarily accurate either. And I think most of us are not saying we should disenfranchise the non-parents, but that the parents' voice in this particular issue should carry more weight.
Ryan had his hand up. You have,
Oh,
you're
I'll
good.
defer.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to agree with Gary that this is a typical strategy that Mr. Stahl seems to be doing, and that's changing the words, misinterpreting what was said. I never said I would ignore the voice of the taxpayers. Any taxpayer can come to me in Charlestown and say anything that they want to about the school system, and I will take it to the proper channels. I am really, really upset with the way things get twisted when he gives his arguments. Okay, so please don't get the impression that I was saying that people out in the public that are not involved with the school or not parents of the school don't matter. They always matter. And I'm insulted that he's accusing us of doing that.
Sir, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Jason DuPont from Hope Valley. Did somebody else have something?
No, you go right ahead.
Ryan.
No,
Okay.
Ryan said he was okay. Thank you, sir. You have the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to echo what has been said. I don't think it was misleading in any way. I think when we talk about, can you hear me?
I guess Donna can't.
I can't.
There you go.
Is this better?
Yes, thank you,
Okay.
sir. That's perfect.
Just want to echo the comments that have been made. I don't think anybody, I think when you look at it and when you change the language and restrict what's there, you're not taking anybody, you're not taking a parent's voice and weakening it. They have the same voice they do. You're taking the voice in the opinion and the process away from somebody who's not a parent. To your point, I had the issue this year. Our daughter is in 8th grade in the middle school. We had a question about a book that she was reading. We met with the principal. We met with her teacher. The alternative was to remove her from the classroom in its entirety. So you're taking a 13-year-old girl who doesn't feel comfortable reading a book, and it's essentially social suicide to some extent, where she's coming out of a classroom and has to explain now why she's going through this. I do agree with the points that citizens have a right. They have a voice. To say that it shouldn't be there because it's creating a backlog for people to deal with, I don't think that's a valid argument. That's what Superintendent Picard said. It was recommended by legal because it creates a backlog for the administration. I think there's got to be a stronger argument than that. I think citizens have a voice. Excuse me? I believe citizens have a voice, and by doing this, you're suppressing their voice. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Here, John.
Mr. Anderson, did you want to speak?
Yeah, no, I just would simply say that I've been misquoted now. Being misquoted is part of the practice, I guess, these days. I do want to point out with this argument with regard to taxpayers outside of Charleston, Richmond, and Hopkinton, that is taxpayers who live in Pawtucket and Central Falls and Woonsocket, expended $13 million of state funds to the Charahoe Regional School District. If we're going to take into a stream, means that any person in the state of Rhode Island could bring an appeal. The people who are affected the most by this are the parents of students. And to argue otherwise, to say that parents are limited, that parents' voices don't count the most, is frankly anti-parent.
think we're going to take this to a vote. There's been a recommendation and a second to approve the revisions to the library meter center policy. There's no other discussion. I'd like to take it to a vote. Those in favor of the revisions? Thank you. Opposed? Mr. Day, thank you. Abstentions or recusals? We can move on.
The next item on the agenda is the transportation categorical aid and statewide bus service issues. We have invited local senators, representatives, and the 3 town councils to discuss the issues the district has had with transportation categorical aid and statewide bus service. And Ned has an overview for the group.
All right, thank you. If you were able to
You probably need
get
the
access
microphone.
to a handout we have at the back of the room.
Can you just move
Grab
that
the microphone,
so you can-
please.
Okay.
This was on the request of Mr. Luzon.
Thank you.
Just a note, this was a request by Mr. Luzon to have this put on. But go ahead, Mr. Draper.
As many may be aware, this year in particular has highlighted some issues with the transportation system at the nationwide level, but particularly in the state. As a result of exposing the different issues that exist, one of the things committee member Luzon had asked was also breaking out the financial impacts. So I think what I'll do is separate and apart from the presentation, I'll just briefly state where we're at as a district and then get into the broader details of how we operate the way we do. So specifically for this year, right now, we are operating fairly well internally, meaning those runs that we do within the Charahoe School District, and also handling some of the outplacements and some of the local trips that we do to surrounding districts. We have an issue remaining with students that come from South Kingstown to the Tech Center. We are working cooperatively with South Kingstown to help get those students here. That was a route that was done by the statewide transportation system. They have not been able to fulfill that route. So what we've been doing is cobbling together runs from our depot and South Kingstown's depot. Also related, as everybody's aware, we've been challenged with traffic here at the campus location. URI had, with the facilitation of Committee Member Liguori, sent over a professor along with student to observe the actual conditions. They're going to take a look in their engineering department and see if they can come up with some possible solutions. We also, as committee's aware, looked at options on the campus. We determined that because of safety and also some other coordination, that might be a little difficult to implement without taking undue risk. So that's a recap of where we're at. Any questions on our current operations or concerns?
And we do have members from all groups. So thank you for attending this evening.
Okay. In the presentation, you have a brief memo from myself to the superintendent. It speaks to the transportation funding as well as our operations. We work cooperatively with the state. Our overall spending in the transportation area, if we flip over to the graph, is approximately $5 million at the current time. That has been growing over time from about $4.4 million. Then we had two, as we know, really outstanding changes. The year that COVID occurred, our actual spending dropped down in the $3 million area. Everybody was caught unexpectedly by that change. Then last year, we had significantly reduced operations due to the space. We have the traffic pattern issues we have. Parents helped us out. Community helped us out, was able to get students here with reduced bus capacity, and we were running about 75% students in person, which is significant as compared to the rest of the state. All right, moving forward from there, if we look at the ride revenue in fiscal year 18, That is comprised of two funding mechanisms. One is a categorical aid, and one is a aid for out-of-district private school transportation or charter school. Those revenues climbed to just under $2 million in FY19. It stabilized in FY20, and just for everybody's information, those budgets are set fairly well in advance, usually determined by July, when the legislature confirms the funding. In FY21, that revenue was around $2 million. And then in FY22, the current operating year, we dropped to about $1.75 million. Big reason for that reduction was in the private school area. The categorical aid remained fairly consistent. Any questions on that piece? Okay. Moving into our expense and how this relates, our expense has climbed fairly consistently. We were about, and I'll use FY19 as the last, so to speak, normal year. We were about $4.6 million. FY20, we dropped significantly, as I mentioned before. FY21, we were still under. There was still a lot less transportation as a result of about 75% attendance. FY22, we're anticipating in the $5 million range. I will say our first bill from the statewide program came in. The rates are significantly higher. In some cases, we have students with a monthly cost of $7,000 to $8,000. So it can get very pricey very quickly, the way transportation is running right now. You can see our expense climbed quite a bit as a result of that. And that's a recap of where we're at.
Thank you. Mr. Luzon.
The reason why I requested this be put on the agenda is 7 years ago, Barry, when I was the chair, Barry enlightened me on this issue. And he basically was telling me that when the state phased out the regional bonus, they made up for it by increasing transportation aid, categorical funding for transportation. And then years back, and I'm so glad you're getting up to the podium, Mr. Kennedy. I'm the one who's
mainly responsible for getting that categorical transportation
But
thing.
from what I understand, what the state is, it's up to them whether they want to give it to us every year or not. And we're seeing.
Well,
Sometimes they do-
statutorily, that's not supposed to be the case. Statutorily, they're supposed to
Right.
provide it.
Well,
Unfortunately, you have people within RIDE who have made that decision each time they've proposed a budget in the past to Gina Raimondo to make cuts to that program. And we're the ones who each year in the legislature turn around to restore as much of it as we can.
which I truly understand.
Yeah.
We appreciate that. We really do. We're just really tired of the dog and pony show.
We are too. We are too.
Yep.
We met regularly with RIDE in the governor's office, in our offices, and I think we're gonna have to have another meeting with them within the governor's office, because the response we've received is not acceptable, and we're just as frustrated as you are.
Do we have legal grounds to force them to follow through on what they promised?
Since there's a statute on the books that states that they're supposed to do this, that places basically a formula that they're supposed to follow. And for whatever, every time I've inquired about it from people at the Department of Education, for all intents and purposes, they tell me, oh, we proposed this. It's the governor's people who made the cut. So, you know, you've got one side passing the buck to the other.
Or not passing.
And, you know, that's the unfortunate thing. Regarding the issue, when I had the opportunity, I sent out, and I shared this with the superintendent, with Mr. Draper, and with Donna today, the email that I had sent to the governor. Sent it to him 9 days ago. And then I followed up a few days later, and I followed up a few days later. Friday night, the governor sent me an email saying, oh, I just read this. Now, his staff had already been in touch with me. I spoke with his staff person, and he said, well, we're waiting for a response from the Department of Education. I said, if we're waiting for a response from the Department of Education, then I already know what the answer is going to be, because the Department of Education has failed every time the school district has come forth with a proposal to try to address what's taken place with the students trying to get over here from South Kingstown, from the Career and Technical Center. Last night, sent another email to the governor. Actually, it was early this morning. It was 1:32 this morning that I sent an email to the governor and to his 2 staff people, expressing a great deal of concern that now we're 9 days in, and I still don't have a response that I can provide to the Charahoe School Committee. What I got early this morning was the email from one of his legislative liaisons, which was also sent to Senator Algier, because I brought up in my thing to the governor, not only did I not get a response, but I know Senator Algier and his staff had not received a response on this. And I was very concerned about that. The response that they finally provided was the statewide transportation program has been unable to provide service for approximately 150 children representing 20 bus routes without service. Charahoe accounts for 2 of these outstanding routes. The makeup of impacted Charahoe students are 0 SPED, 1 homeless, 0 foster, and 9 PCCT, private schools, charter, career, and tech. Charahoe is also involved with 27 South Kingstown students that attend Charahoe area career and tech. It is this group of parents that have been concerned and have been reaching out. The severe driver shortage continues to impact selected statewide vendors, DATCO, First Student, and Amerol bus companies that were hired to service these routes. Vendors continue to be impacted by driver callouts due to COVID infections and stressful working conditions. There are no spare drivers available for coverage. Charahoe's remaining statewide routes have required that group stops be created to ensure as many students as possible are being transported to the school. This included a tiered bus schedule and modified bell times. In many instances, this means that students are arriving late to school and or having to leave earlier than standard dismissal times to ensure that they are afforded a ride to school as opposed to not having any statewide service. RIDE continues to work with vendors and the RI Division of Motor Vehicles to manage recruitment, training, credentialing, and testing of suitable bus drivers to manage the outstanding routes. The hiring time for a new driver to move through the recruitment process is approximately 8 weeks. This is not the answer I was looking for.
No.
I was looking for an answer as far as why are they not looking at some of the solutions that the school committee and the superintendent have come up with to address those issues with South Kingstown. Obviously, it's because the Department of Education has no interest in coming up with a solution or to follow any of those things, other than if Charahoe wants to take this upon themselves to come up with the money to do it, then they're willing to look at it. Otherwise, according to them, it's against the statute.
But Ned, correct me if I'm wrong, but we get penalized if we do something of that nature.
Correct.
Yes.
If you're not in the out of the statewide program, you get penalized. That's
Yes.
right.
So the root of my argument is this: we're short $251,144 again.
Yep.
Is this same what's going on with us happening to all regional school districts?
That I don't know.
There is an increase in the FY '22 budget. There's an increase in transfer COVID here, which wouldn't be fair. The numbers were down. Well, Brian was up at 1:32 in the morning. I was sleeping. Sorry, Brian. But I got the same email as well.
Yep.
I think what needs to happen is we need to get back, Representative Philippi, we need to get back with RIDE and the governor's office, because at the end of the day, what we've done, we basically had a hold harmless in the budgets over the years for transportation aid for Charahoe. And I think if RIDE is not going to do that, then we have to go back to the leadership and just put it in the budget.
Or
If
can we,
just for Charahoe,
can we sue and say,
that you're not following the statute?
right,
I don't see any reason that you can't do that.
okay.
That's up to your attorney? Yeah.
Mr. Day's been waiting. Mr. Day, you had a question.
Yes, you gentlemen are doing a hell of a job
Yeah,
in plain
thank you so
English.
much.
But, you know, Ned said, we work together with the state. No, we don't work together with the state. The state works against us. If you look at, if these figures are correct, we're getting 1,543,000. Charahoe's the largest school district in the state. Bristol Warring, one of the smaller school districts, they're getting $1 million, 161. How does this equate to the mileage that we're running here in Charahoe to Bristol and Warren? You know, this is a political thing. It's got to be political, or Bristol Warren wouldn't be as close to the same amount of money that they get in transportation aid as we are down here with I don't know exact figures at Bristol Warren, but we've got to be over twice as many miles in the town of the Charahoe district as they have in Bristol and Warren, and they're like $300,000 behind us. There's something wrong with the math.
Yeah.
And I applaud you gentlemen for
We'll
working
We'll
hard.
work on it, we'll work on it. We have over the years, and we'll work on it. The 22 budget. Yeah. What I will say is, I am sure right now, RIDE is already, since typically what happens is by the middle to the end of January, the budget is expected to be submitted by the governor. If he's on the track to do so this year, which there should be no reason, he's no longer stepping into a position to take over for Gina Raimondo. He's had a year at that point in time to have done the job as governor. I would expect that the Department of Education is already working on next year's budget. And the question obviously will be, because they won't share it with us right now, how much they're either going to put in for that categorical regional transportation money, or how much they're not going to put in. Because that is the game that's played every year. And, you know, with the fact that we were able to enact a budget this year without too many problems, there should be no reason that next year's budget, there should be no reason that there should be a cut to this particular program. In fact, the fact that Charahoe was one of the very few school districts that continued to operate throughout the COVID pandemic and was having bus service throughout should be even more of a reason that numbers have to be adjusted to make up for it, because all of those numbers, as far as the money spent on bus transportation, it's a trailing type system. And so this being the case, while most of the other school districts were not operating last year, Charahoe was, and there should be monies put in.
In the 22 budget, there's the extra for transportation program, there's an extra 2.2 million or so money. And some of that was for COVID related, as it relates to transportation, the costs associated with cleaning, sanitizing, et cetera. So we need to look at that also.
Thank you. Mr. Luzon, you had another question?
So if this is a statute, which is a law, why does RIDE have the ability to basically say, we're not going to follow the law?
We ask that every year.
I mean, why is it within their discretion?
We ask that every year, and God rest his soul, when Barry was with us, sitting in on those meetings,
he did.
we asked that question with Barry right there. We don't know how they're, doing this to, for all intents and purposes, do an end run around the statute. Thank you.
We'll get him back in the office, Greg. We had some discussions about this earlier, myself, Brian, and Blake.
And we're happy to have those conversations as well. We've offered up different ideas to RIDE share what we could do even regionally with South Kingstown, but they still said they would not reimburse us the dollars if we went forward, which is what we would need and want to be able to ensure the transportation was efficient.
Yeah.
So they weren't willing to, they said it was law, and I also said it was law that they made sure our students were here on time, and for some reason that didn't weigh as high.
See, laws only apply when they want them to apply at the Rhode Island Department of Education. Basically, you can see they have a great deal of leeway as to what laws they're going to follow and what laws they're not going to follow.
Because we've offered up alternatives.
Well, we certainly will bring you, give you an update as when we have our meeting.
And
prior
thank
to
you.
And after our meeting.
Thank you so much for all that you all
Yeah,
do.
wait, Dr. Callahan had a question.
Not a question, just a comment. Gentlemen, thank you for coming tonight,
Yes,
listening
thank
to
you.
us. I think I don't have anything to add beyond what Craig touched on.
Well, you run a good district. You run a very good district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to hearing
Getting
from you. We hope
challenging.
you're successful in fighting for us,
Yes.
and thank you for fighting for us.
Thank you
you
very
so
much.
much. Thank you.
Let us know what we can
Thank
do
you.
in the
Thank
future.
you.
Thank you. Have a good night. Be safe.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you so much. Our next item is the high school course proposal for 2022, 2023 statistics. I recommend approval of the high school course proposal for the 2022, 2023 for statistics. And Ms. Bernadini is here if you have any questions.
So moved.
Second,
There's been a motion and a second to recommend the approval of the new high school statistics course for 22-23 school year. Any, yes, Mr. Callahan?
so prior to this, we didn't offer any type of statistics formally, or
what the students choose in course selection.
Thank you. The Dr. Harris?